Good afternoon. This is Ashley Smith, Canyon City Mayor. I'd like to open our Vision Committee meeting, public hearing for our budget hearing for 2021. Cindy, can we please do a roll call?
Councilmember Dennehy?
Here.
Councilmember Gonzalez? Absent. Councilmember Jaquez? Absent. Councilmember Meisner? Absent. Councilmember Reed? Absent. Councilmember B. Smith?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hemrick?
Here.
Mayor Smith?
Here. We'll go ahead and turn the meeting over to our staff, please.
Okay, great. Mayor and members of council, beginning of this month, we submitted a proposed budget to City Council for your review. This is the budget hearing to go through that proposed budget. There have been several weeks and several tweaks that have gone into the budget since then, so the numbers that you're going to see during the presentation are not going to match completely with what you're going to see in your budget books. Based off of direction that we received from council tonight, we will update those budget books accordingly, and you'll have those returned back to council members for your review before we bring it to City Council for first and second reading. With that, I'll turn it over to Tammy Nordyke, our Finance Director, to go through the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. As City Administrator Stevens mentioned, we will be going over our 2020 budget, and this is the hearing, 2021 budget, and this is the hearing for that. Some of the major changes that you will see will be the personnel costs will be different, some operating costs will be different, and so we will, as he mentioned, we will get those books back to you. We'll start with the total revenue. The total revenue listed does not include the use of reserves, operating transfers, the sale of fixed assets, or the proceeds from financing. So these are essentially our operating revenues that come in each year. As you can see, the 2021 budget is up approximately $600,000 in revenue over our 2020 budget. The total expense budget is up approximately $2 million from 2020, and that does include our transfers. It is anticipated general fund will receive operating transfers from other funds of $1,113,000 and use approximately $2.2 million of reserves. With the use of the reserves, the city is estimated to maintain over 29% of unassigned fund balance as a percentage of operating expenses. So we are still well in guidelines.
And just for some of the new council members, those guidelines that we've been given by previous city council was to maintain an operating reserve between 20 and 30%.
We will go over each section of the general fund budget. It is broke down by function. So in our general government, this includes our administration department, the city clerk, the city council, finance, HR, buildings, the building department, planning, and those types of functions. So the IT equipment calls for the replacement of a server, a firewall, and adding surveillance cameras in the park. So that is what that $74,000 is made up of. The maintenance under capital includes carpeting in the chambers and the boiler replacement for the museum. It was budgeted in the 2020 budget, but we did delay it because of COVID. The other item that you see is a generator for $175,000. That generator would be a backup generator to keep City Hall up and running. We will only do that project if we are able to get grant funding for it. We're also looking at adding a new permit technician, and that is a part-time position and would only be eligible for PTO and retirement after 6 months.
And that permit technician would be for the building department to help improve customer service and answer calls and general questions regarding building permits.
Our public safety section includes our police department. We have new personnel, an evidence technician, which would be part-time, and then converting a community service officer from moving it to full-time. The estimated cost to add the part-time evidence technician is approximately $26,000. The position would work up to 25 hours a week and is eligible for PTO and retirement again after the 6 months. The estimated cost to bring the part-time code enforcement officer to full-time is approximately $30,650, and that does include the benefits, so the medical benefits. We've also, if you notice that the capital outlay is significantly less than what we had budgeted for 2020, and that is because we are looking to try to create a 5-year replacement cycle for our police vehicles. And so this budget is shown utilizing a fleet management lease program. The program would replace approximately 9 vehicles per year. The first year is budgeted at $125,000. The estimate from the lease company as of today is for the first year at $87,000. By the time we have all the vehicles in the program, the annual lease payment is estimated at $450,000. The program does not limit the number of miles or charge for wear and tear on the vehicles. Previously, the city was budgeting approximately $350,000 a year for the replacement of the police vehicles. That equates to about a 10 to 12 year replacement cycle. By 2024, when we will have approximately 80% of the police vehicles in the program, the lease on City Hall will be paid off. This would allow for $230,000 annual payment to possibly be redirected toward the fleet replacement program. In 2021, we are anticipating completing the demolition work at 1145 Ohio and designing the rest of the building. This will not only allow for the new chief to provide feedback as to what should be in the building, but also provide us enough time to bid out the project for funding in the 2022 budget. Another significant change in the public safety function is switching from an employee who is from having the victim's advocate as an employee to having that provided as a service by a third party.
Wait, did you say that you're moving victim's advocate would be done by a third party instead of in-house?
Yes, we are entering into a contract, and I think we already have entered into that contract.
No, we've not entered into a contract yet. That's something that we'll be bringing forward to City Council.
Is that like with the county or?
It'd actually be with Kindred Care's kids.
Oh. Same employee? Would that employee just switch over?
Currently, the position's vacant.
Oh, the current position is vacant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The next section we have is our Public Works division, which includes streets, engineering, fleet. And am I missing anything else? I don't think so. And so our capital items that we're looking at is to do an overhead door to the fleet shop. Again, this was something that had been budgeted in 2020, but we deferred it due to COVID. Same thing with the roller, if you recall.
And I just want to note for Cindy that Councilman Meisner has joined us. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Already texted her.
Oh,
Hey, sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. So also you'll notice that the roller replacement is in the 2021 budget. That again was an item that was approved in 2020. We had went out for bid for it and we were ready to award it, but then we had COVID hit and so we did not purchase that roller. Also, we're looking at replacing a crew cab pickup truck. And then engineering is asking to have their nuclear density gauge replaced. And then we have our capital projects. A lot of them are ones that we have every year in the budget. The street reconstruction overlays, which is essentially the chip seal. We put in for ditch crossings, sidewalk replacement program, downtown alleys, and then we're continuing the wayfinding kiosks. And then we also have the clock tower parking lot.
asking questions now.
I was going to say same thing. Would you like us to ask questions if we have them on this page or on this slide, or do you want us to wait till the end of your presentation?
It's up to you.
Whichever makes more sense for council.
I kind of wanted to ask while that was here.
That's
How about
fine.
you, Councilmember Meisner?
Yeah, I mean, I got lots of questions, but go ahead. Ma'am?
Oh. Well, one of them was the overhead door to the fleet shop. Wasn't that scheduled to be done in 2020?
Yeah.
And that was
It-
one of the ones that was paused.
Yeah, so
because
the,
of-
the overhead door, the roller replacements, both of those were projects that we had budgeted for this year, but we scrapped them because of COVID.
Okay, and then the wayfinding kiosks, are those the ones that we've had on our budget every single year that are supposed to go on Highway 50 and a little pull out? Or are these different?
Let me look at that real
They
quick.
gotta be the ones out there on the north side of town, east side of town.
Yeah, it's been like
Uh,
years.
I thought they nixed that whole project.
No, I think this is the second phase of the wayfinding signs that we have, the street sign, the directional signs that we put up, the new signage. So we did a phase, a pared down phase this year. This would be the next phase of that.
Okay. I'd like confirmation on that, although I'm pretty sure the kiosks were grant money, but, and then I have talked to you about this before, and that's the clock tower parking lot. And so I think it's appropriate to say now that we're in a public meeting that the intention when we purchased that parking lot was part of the Centennial Park master plan of having that connection, that kind of yellow brick road from Centennial Park to Veterans Park to downtown as a, a really great crossing across Highway 50 to bring people to downtown, and then eventually, to Macon Plaza. And I'm not really interested in using that money just to refurnish or refinish a parking lot. That's mostly for the benefit of Brews and Bikes and Doritos. I would definitely want to see something that was more in the spirit of the master plan that City Council approved, with that in mind at the time of purchase. I recognize that the money that's allotted won't be able to do that, so maybe it might need to be something that we save up money for or reallocate some funds.
Yeah, and, we can bring back a couple of proposed ideas for that, and take a look and see if we can fit it into this year's budget or if that needs to be a delayed project or not.
Okay.
But
It was 50,000.
I think it was
we
82,000.
we had 82,000
Yeah.
budgeted in there for the clock tower parking lot.
And at the time, the conversations were recognizing that we did need to have some parking there, but it also was supposed to be a gathering place for the community, especially around that clock tower, to make it make sense that it's there and just have a
So
public benefit.
Yep, and the clock tower parking lot, the way we have it designed right now is to use 82,000 for the parking lot, and then also that alley is scheduled to be reconstructed this year as well. So those two projects were going to coincide together for that particular lot. But if council would like to see something that's more in line with the master plan, we can certainly put something together. It would be my recommendation to also look at, and I know Councilman Meisner is not going to necessarily like this suggestion, but also looking at the bump outs for the 300 block. If you're gonna spend the money to have a nice road and pathway going up to Main Street, I guess my argument would be when you get there, you'd want the rest of it to look nice going towards the other improvements that we have. So I'd recommend looking at both of those to coincide with each other.
So what, that's another 100,000, 150,000 or something?
It'd be more than that, yeah. Probably close to half a million.
$500,000 per block. So it would take a while to save up for that.
I'm not opposed to the blockouts. I'm just opposed to not being able to make turns,
Absolutely.
okay? And then being told that you can make a turn when in fact you can't make a turn without impeding into the other lane. Those are the things that upset me. The concept of the blockouts, I think are great. I mean, I realize there's people that are for and against the whole concept. And you're always going to have that sidewalk back behind the traffic line that people have to stop and move forward, and they don't like that, but,
That's the purpose of them.
right. But I also thought that the alley project was part of the Main Street project. So what alley are you talking about on 3rd Street?
Yeah, we reconstruct, we've been reconstructing alleys on a systematic basis for several years.
But that was all based upon the downtown improvement project and the commitment that if we changed Main Street and didn't allow trucks to park on Main Street, that the city would commit to redoing the alleys. And I thought last year was the last alley of that whole commitment thing.
Yeah, and well, this year, we had it budgeted again, but we didn't do any alley reconstruction this year again because of COVID.
Yeah, but I think you're right.
What's the
It
alley
was
they did
due,
it?
the alley commitment was because of the bump outs.
Right, but they redid the alley there across from the library.
Mm-hmm. That was the previous year, I believe, 19.
I don't know about that. I know time flies, but.
Yeah, Teak was still open when they were redoing that alley because I had complaints from them. So I
Yeah, but the alley,
You
the alley that's
distinctly
south,
remember.
the alley that's west of the library,
alley
where the
that's-
pole just got replaced.
Yeah, that was in 19.
Okay.
Time does indeed fly, even during COVID, the longest year in the world. Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Meisner.
So I read some mention somewhere about this lease program on vehicles. Does that only apply to the PD?
Currently, we're looking at only, we're trying to start the program with just the police department to see how the program works and if it is something we want to do. We can, based on our discussions with the enterprise, we can opt in 1 year and not add any vehicles the next year if we don't, if we can't. And we can also get out of it at any time. But our plan is to initially look at seeing how it works with the police department. Ultimately, we would like to do it for the city, but we want to see how it's going to work first.
With the police department, we have some vehicles that are still, Jim, 2010?
We have still one 2007, several 2009s, 10s, 11, 12, 13. So we're well past where we should be.
Yeah, the reason for starting with the police department is because we do have quite a few of the older fleet in there, and there are some safety concerns there. We want to make sure that the officers have vehicles that aren't going to break down during a pursuit, which has happened. We want to make sure that, they're putting on anywhere between 20 and 30,000 miles a year on the police vehicles. So again, making sure that we're keeping the mileage fairly low as we're going through this process and the replacement program.
So I've got some kind of follow-up questions there, because if we're going to ask, as we're going through, coming back to some pages.
Sure.
Sorry.
Councilman Miser brought us back pretty quickly to the leasing thing. So based on my understanding and my investigation for my family over the years, leasing doesn't save you money, it costs you money. And so tell us a little bit about what the theory is here between using a leasing program versus, and I understand what you're saying about the immediacy of the need. And so it's my concern is that because we haven't addressed this in the past, the need is acute, and because of that, we're looking at entering into a leasing program. Tell me a little bit about the theory of why we want to lease.
If you'd like.
If you'd like, come up to the mic. While Jim's walking up, I do want to point out that this is a municipal lease, so it's a little bit different than a lease to individuals or family households.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with this program, we get the cars a lot cheaper than what you would get if you were going down to lease one as your family. Enterprise buys and sells 1 million cars a year. And so usually after the 5-year program, they can sell it for pretty much what they bought it for. So you're not losing a lot of depreciation like you would in a normal lease. So that's the volume is where it comes from. And then the savings, they project that over the 5 years, if we went with that program just on the police fleet, we would save over $200,000 over the 5 years versus purchasing them. So we're going to be able to purchase them even a lot lower than what state bid prices are with these vehicles, because they have so much purchasing power. They also, the part of their plan is the same business model that they have with their enterprise fleet, that they sell the car while it still has value. Where we use the cars for 10, 15 years, they're worth nothing when we're done with them. They try to make it, if it's a 4-year lease, which the police department thing we're looking at the end of the 4 years, they have customers and they have a sales base where they can peddle these cars and get good retail value for them, and it's not taking them down to a zero value on this. So you get a lot of buyback when you at the end of your 4 years. When you turn that car in, instead of getting $1,000, you're getting 10, 12, 15,000 for that vehicle, and they're just so much cheaper. As far as the purchase, they get them so much cheaper than we can, even on state bid, that's where the value is. And with capital budgets the way they are, this is really getting to be the way most municipalities are financing their fleets, because you're just you don't have to put out, where we've been putting $300 and some thousand into our police fleet a year, and we're getting 4 cars. We're just getting farther and farther behind. So with the lease program, you can get up to where you're getting 8 or 9 cars. You're getting into that 4-year cycle, and you're selling them while they're still worth money. So that's basically how it works. It's the same business model that they use in the enterprise fleet all over, and they're just moving it to municipal leases, and it's pretty much going all over the country like that. Most municipalities that can't afford the capital budget to purchase these cars every year, doing the lease, you're saving money over the term of the lease.
So Jim, there's a bit of a car shortage now because of COVID-19. Do you anticipate, even through enterprise, that there could be shortages to have these leases available to us?
That could be, but where we run into a problem purchasing our cars is we're going budget year to budget year. So right now, a lot of the places are putting in their orders for their cars between August and September, they're getting in the queue. The way we do it, I have to wait till after January to start looking at it or where I can put in a purchase. So it's March or April before we order our police cars. We're getting them in November, December. On this type of program, if we've identified what we want, we've spec'd out the cars. They can put in the order as soon as the factory starts taking them. So we're gonna be getting our cars early in the year. They will be putting in their orders. They have enough buying power that they can get in the queue pretty regular and get their cars, probably better than even our dealerships here. So I think it'll be a lot of the time that we spend now won't be involved anymore in that. So it seems like a pretty good, situation for us to where we're always behind the queue whenever we go to purchase our cars. The same problem we've had with these leases we've had to get on these last two cars that were grant vehicles, where the grants didn't come out until June or July. They're already stopped taking orders for this year's cars in March. We're too late to get in the cycle for this year, so then we're out trying to search for cars like I did this year because we can't get one ordered and received by the time the grant funding is available. So with the lease program, I think that will take care of a lot of those problems we're having.
Can we still use grant funding towards leased vehicles?
Well, this two that we have, you can only use, the grant specifies that it has to be a lease. So, and that's with our co-responder program. So if that continues to go, they will reimburse the lease payments. So that's why we've been looking for the leases on those.
A recent example of a law enforcement office that did a lease program is actually the sheriff's office. And I talked to Sheriff Cooper a little bit about that program, and he thought the lease program was good, but the part that fell short for them was they didn't negotiate out the miles. So they ended up paying extra because of the miles. This program that we're looking at is not counting miles, does not count the wear and tear. So that that's a benefit for us as far as not having to worry about additional expenses because of mileage.
Councilmember Meisner?
Wait, you said that it does not count?
And
Correct.
the agreement
There's no
that,
mileage limitation.
that's correct.
That is correct.
So when you lease one of these police vehicles, we're obviously getting a police interceptor.
We
But
can
it doesn't
spend,
include any accessory equipment, is that correct? Is that correct?
Upfitting.
no, it does. They will do the upfitting. We have to pay 50% of the upfitting up front where they purchase the thing. But that price for the police vehicles, that is an upfitted car. So we do have to pay a cash 50% of the upfitting cost, which runs around $10,000 to $11,000 per car. So we would pay 50% of that, but the lease payments that it is in the budget here, that is for an upfitted car ready to roll.
So this is like a specialty for police departments throughout the entire nation kind of thing, or?
That's where they're trying to
It's
go with
kind
it.
of a niche.
They've
Yeah.
done a lot of it through, it's getting bigger with municipal governments because of the capital shortages that, people don't have to go out and replace their fleet. And we're not unique in having a really old fleet. That's pretty much the norm around, that this is a tool that they're coming out with that kind of gets where we can get to where we need to be. And, eventually, over the 5 years, it keeps escalating a little bit until you start turning them back in. But you're still saving over the life of the thing. They're estimating that we'll save over $200,000 on ours versus the purchases of what we're doing now.
Okay. Councilmember Meisner?
So what is the term of the lease? Did I pick up 48 months?
The plan, as they have laid out, is by the 5th year, we would have all of the vehicles in there. So it does look as if it's based on a 5-year plan. And we can have the gentleman from Enterprise come to a future council meeting to discuss the program in depth with council before we make a final decision on that. We would just need to know if that's something you'd like to do, and when we do it, and we can get them involved and come in. Tonight, we did not want to have them come do the full presentation. We wanted to just give them, we just wanted to give you an overview of what the program was about.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you that your answer was complete from my perspective. I, for one, am not so much interested in having them come in and make a presentation to us. I mean, if you all understand that and have reviewed it, and you're telling us this is $1 savings for us, and we get new vehicles a lot quicker, in terms of what we spend per year, it sounds like a no-brainer to me.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Meisner.
Well, and I'm kind of like with Mr. Hamrick, that I'm not here questioning your ability to interpret whether it's a good deal or not, but as John has said, historically, leasing versus purchasing, it's like renting versus buying. You wind up with nothing, which you keep talking about some value, you still wind up with nothing at the end of that lease, including whatever accessory equipment we put in there. Now, I realize in 5 years, does that include the terminals? It would not.
The MDTs?
No.
Yeah.
No.
No, that's
Would it
all.
include all that bracketing and stuff that we need for those?
It would include that. It would include all your light bars, your console, everything except the MTD stuff. The radar, of course, would be separate that we normally purchase, which now when we order a police vehicle now, when it comes from the upfitter, we're still buying the graphics. On top of that, we're still buying the radar.
Right.
Now, we can, depending on the age of the vehicle we're replacing, right now, when we buy a new one, we're replacing the radar because we have been taking them from other cars that we're decommissioning, but they're so old now, when you got a car that's 12, 15 years old, the radar is too old to put in the new vehicle. So if we're replacing them at 4 years, a lot of that we will be able to use in the next vehicle.
I think the only thing I question is, and again, it's your job knowing this, you're saying that you can equip a vehicle for 10 grand?
We can upfit it to the
'Cause
specs that we've been getting, but that does not include your body camera, it doesn't include your computer, it doesn't include your radar.
I think-
That is your lighting, your radio, consoles, all of that. The extra stuff that we put in that we need, that's still gonna be,
I think when we look at those figures, you need to separate that, because when we're looking at the purchase of a vehicle for $35,000, $39,000, and then we're coming back around and piling another $25,000 on top of that in accessories and computers and lights and radar, you know, we need to make for sure we're comparing that lease to the right base vehicle price and not that big bundled price, because we're still going to be paying that bundle.
Yeah, we have it broken out for the vehicle versus the upfitting.
Okay.
It doesn't show in the budget that way, but we have those numbers.
Councilmember Smith.
I just had a comment. I think it sounds like a great idea. I'm kind of on the same page with Jim and John. The only thing I would be worried about the lease situation is the fact that it wouldn't go out to local bid.
well, yes and no. They will, Enterprise will work with local dealers. The warranty work would still be done through the local dealerships. They do have operating agreements with most of the local places. It's not all just the dealerships, but local shops in town. And it is bidded out because they are a Sourcewell vendor. And so they have been competitively priced through Sourcewell. So that's another reason why we're getting such a good deal on them. It's a nationally competed bid through Sourcewell.
Okay.
Any other questions from council on any of the slides that we have already gone over?
Yes.
Go ahead, John.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
So, looking at the public safety that we've looked at, And I just want to ask this question for the record. So right now, the public safety budget that we have does or does not include a raise for our police officers? And I want to say, I think this is important for city personnel to hear. What the kind of the approach that we've taken in past years is to want to raise both salary bases at the same time. But what I am seeing is that you know, some of our new positions, it seems, on the civilian side of things, if we say it that way, can take a little bit of time to fill, but I do not see the substantial vacancies on our civilian staffing side that I do on our police department side. Because of that reason, I believe that we have to look at a raise for the police department, and it's just from my perspective, it's a sad fact of life that we have to start you know, increasing the compensation for our police officers until we're not seeing some of the vacancies. This last year has been a little bit better in the police department, but in the past, and I think that even now we're because of our change in recruiting, we've been successful. But the point is, we have to have the constant recruiting to replace those who leave for greener pastures. And so that's my question. Do we have a...
Yes. So there's a 2.67 cost of living increase for all city employees. We do have some money budgeted in there as well to start addressing police salaries as well.
One, if I can, at the Rotary Luncheon today, Sheriff Cooper shared what the experience that his department had when he came in and took over as sheriff, and that was one of the things that he went to his county supervisors and told them that pay needed to be addressed. He said the supervisors told him, "Fine, that's good, not a problem, but you have to do something for us." And the ask from the supervisors is that the sheriff's office go through and document the job duties of each officer, of each person employed in the sheriff's office, so that salaries could be then normalized. And that was something he had to do. It sounded like he did it internal, but that of course involves a lot of HR work to do something like that. And so something I would like to hear also is, are we sure that our job descriptions in the police department are consistent with the duties that our officers are carrying out now?
Yeah, and we have a job classification study budgeted for next year. It's actually out to RFP bid right now, because we do recognize that as something not just for the police department, but for citywide. Council may remember that the city attorneys had recently sent out an email regarding the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. This is something that we would be doing in addition to help address some of the compliance issues with that new act as well. So not only is it just for the police department, but that's something that we're looking for on a citywide basis. So part of the reason we've got the RFP out is to determine what the cost of this is going to be. We do have a budget number of, I believe, $50,000 in the budget, but we don't know what the overall cost is going to be, and we may need to phase it over a couple of years.
Any more questions about the slides thus far? Ready to
Are we
move
going to
on?
go through all these slides today, or this whole book, or what's the plan?
Well, yeah, we'll see how far we get. Depends on how many questions we have.
And I did have one more
Okay.
question on page 75, under the General Fund Police Department Victim Assistance, it shows that life and health insurance as a line item, our 2020 budget was $9,000, and our 2021 budget is 3 times that. or, you know, 2.5 times that? Is there, what's going on?
So as Tammy mentioned earlier, we're looking at actually going to contract services for this position. So there would actually be about $23,000 in savings compared to what's in your budget book now. So it'd be about a $50,000 contract to contract the victims advocate position.
Yeah, that is one of the changes. And then you would, right now, that position is vacant. And so when we prepared the budget for October 1st, we had not discussed going into a contract. And so all positions that are vacant, we budget at family coverage. And so that's why you would see that difference, because the 2020 was based on what that individual held. And with a vacancy, we do not know what they're going to take, so we always budget for family.
Okay, thank you.
Why are we contracting that? I missed that?
You did. You were not here
Okay.
when I covered that, but maybe briefly you can.
Yeah, it's a service that we're looking at taking externally. We have, you know, Kindred Care Kids is expressed interest in providing that service, not just for kids, but also adult services as well. Tammy Wagner, we have on the phone. Do you want to discuss that a little bit more or go into a little bit more detail?
I can. Lori Jenkins is currently over that program with Kindred Kids. She actually has experience in this and built the Victims Advocate program with Sheriff's Office when Biker was the sheriff. So she did that for the 7 years and then trained Lisa, who is now currently their Victims Advocate. So she would be able to do that program for us, and we'd have a cost savings there. We use Kindred Kids already when it comes to the children, the victims that we have that come through, as well as their families. So it would make sense to go through Kindred Kids and rely on her as well as her past experience and the training, the training that she can provide. She can also provide some in-house training as well for our investigators who are all housed in the same building.
And that's another great point, is that they're co-located at the annex building. So it just, you know, it seems like there's a lot of really good synergy with having that relationship there.
Well, and it's a really comforting atmosphere for victims of all ages, I'm sure. And it just makes sense to put them all together.
And there's a savings associated with that or not?
There is. So,
And that's in the budget now? I'm looking at the wrong budget? Because I'm looking at about $14,000 difference. That's not savings.
yeah, so before
I
you,
calculate
yeah,
savings.
before you got here, we addressed council to let them know that a lot of the numbers you're going to see in the presentation have changed since the proposed budget came out. So the contract that we're talking about with Kindred Care Kids is a $50,000 contract compared to the $74,000 that was paid this year, or was budgeted this year, or $70,000.
Are we ready to move on? All right, let's do that.
The next area we have in general fund is our culture and recreation. The capital project that is being requested is the Centennial Park Master Plan, Phase 3, $35,000 towards that.
And this is preparing for moving the shop at some point.
At some point, because that could be a long point. That $35,000 could go towards the clock tower or something else.
Yeah, so, you know, it's removing one of the buildings out there, and later in the budget, we actually have some money budgeted for some potential land acquisition over by the cemetery, over by the 9th Street shop.
I thought we already had land for the relocation.
We have land that's over there, but that is all, long-term, it's all dedicated to the cemetery. Those will all be grave sites at some point.
And on the request from the Centennial Park Master Plan, it does say that the 2021 proposed budget will be used to repair and replace the drainage system in the ball field section of the park and demolish the old concrete outbuilding, is what they were talking about for that $35,000.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
And so I have a request. So as we're on this slide, culture and recreation. So could you, it looks like we're jumping around a little bit from the budget sequence. Do you have a budget page number or a budget book, a page number that we're looking at so that we can follow along with you, please?
So the culture and recreation starts on page
96 maybe?
95.
Thank you.
So are you saying that that's going to be correcting damage and taking down an old cement outbuilding, or is that going towards?
He talks about having the drainage repaired by the ball field and then also to take down that concrete building, which is in preparation for a future shop, the shop expansion
What shop?
for the parks.
The relocation of the
relocation.
parks up to the 9th Street facility.
Which is,
It's a building that's down at the Parks Department itself.
yeah, they want to move the entire Parks Department up, which is like a fight, was it $500,000, $800,000 ultimately to move that?
Yeah, it was in that range, somewhere between 500 and 800,000.
Kind of makes more sense that we make those preparations when we're actually ready to do the project.
The preparations, I'm lost. What building are we knocking down?
It's one of the concrete buildings over in Centennial Park, the park shop,
It's in
the fenced area.
park maintenance area. It's not in the park itself, it's inside their gates for the park maintenance.
Beside the building or something?
Rex is on there,
How
if you
long
want
is-
to.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please enlighten us, Rex.
Well, what we're talking about is the old concrete building in Centennial Park, which is up against the south wall of the enclosure. That building has been there for who knows how long, before 1970, I'm sure. But that's the building that we are talking about. We're just trying to get ready to move the shop, so that building would be demolished. It's an old concrete building. And the other part of that, the fund was to repair or replace the drainage system in the ball field section of Centennial Park. It's always been, or at least for the last 5 to 7 years, has been really boggy. And the drainage system just isn't working. It's getting plugged up, and that's what we're going to replace with the funding that we have for 2021.
We're gonna tear up that field?
How much are you tearing the field up, Rex?
Well, it won't be much. What we're trying to do, and hopefully this will work, we'll just take probably just a bucket width, probably 12 to 18 inches worth. And what we're trying to do is get that drainage system, it's plugged up over the years. So what we're gonna have to do is dig down really in the existing pipeline and just put new leach rock and drain field in that particular section. So it won't be a heck of a lot of disturbance to the entire ball field section.
Rex, if you tear down that concrete building and let's say, post-COVID, our economy's having a hard time recovering and it could be 5+ years before you relocate, is that going to be a problem for your facility?
What's in that building?
Well, it would be at this particular time, but if things move forward as planned and we are in a new facility within the next 2 or 3 years, then I would say no.
How much is the land acquisition up by the graveyard?
Well, I put $15,000 in the budget, and I know Bob Hartzman put a similar amount in his budget to purchase
30.
5 to 6 acres north, or, south of the cemetery.
So
Lakeside Cemetery.
30,000 total.
And
Yes.
that,
It'll be split between the Parks Department and the Water
they'll both
Department.
be using it?
And that's just that piece of ground, just right directly south of the cemetery.
Yeah, it's across Poplar.
Is it for sale?
We've already been in discussion trying to get pricing on it. Yep. It recently changed hands, and the new owner, did he approach us or did we approach him, Bob? We approached him to see what his level of interest was, and he did have a level of interest in selling it to the city.
Well, I do see some value in obtaining the land while it is available, because we do know we will need to expand and move at some point in time.
And why is, what's the interest for the water department? I got lost there, how we all of a sudden went from 1 to 2.
It would be a combined Parks and Water Department new shop.
Government at work here.
All right, Bob, let's hear about it.
Hello, Madam Mayor, Council. Yeah, as part of the Water Department's 5-year capital plan, we had been budgeting some money to expand our existing facility. We're just kind of out of room. And room for equipment, room for staff, room for parts. And so the idea that I presented a couple years ago to administration was to add on to our existing facility. But then when this opportunity came up, and this gentleman was interested in maybe parting ways with about 10 acres, and the idea that we knew that as part of the Centennial Park Master Plan, that the park shop needed to be relocated. I know Rex has been budgeting money for that as well, that we saw it as an opportune time maybe to do something together and solve both problems.
But am I wrong in making the assumption that you didn't have a land area problem to start with? Because you were going to add on to your existing facility?
Well, if we add on to that west end of the existing building, it's going to push the limits of the existing lot. It probably almost need to expand that lot a little bit. But again, as Ryan mentioned, that's all cemetery property. Even what the building sets on today is cemetery property.
And one of the things that we're also looking at is an actual, the potential of a land swap between that newly acquired land with the cemetery property, so that we could probably even look at expanding in place rather than necessarily starting new buildings to the south.
Yeah, developing brand new. And I know I've had a little bit of conversation with Rex over that. I don't know if he still has hesitation about it, but it would make more sense to purchase the land on the south side of Poplar, basically at the intersection of South 9th and Poplar, 10 acres along the frontage of Poplar for cemetery grave sites. As Ryan says, the land about comparable in acreage where the carnival lot is and stuff, then that would relieve that worry about building on cemetery property, and then we could expand our facilities in a much different fashion.
Rex, I have another question for you. In the back of the budget book, it also says that there's $25,000 allotted in 2021 and 2022 for ADA playground and facility revisions.
Yes, and that's been an ongoing project. We have an entire list of improvements that we need to make to ADA revisions throughout the parks. So that's what that is. That's a continuing effort to eliminate those problems that we have with ADA restrictions.
Is that Centennial?
Is that at Centennial or is that throughout our other parks in town.
That's throughout
Correct.
every park that we own.
And that will be in the Park Improvement Fund. It is not budgeted in general fund.
Okay,
Correct.
gotcha. Any other questions from council on this page? Let's move on.
Okay.
I did, but I forgot it.
So that was the last section in general fund. We will now move on to the Park Improvement Fund. This is pages 103 through 105 in your budget book.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It is anticipated that we will not be using any reserves from the Park Improvement Fund. We will be using the larger portion of the Royal Gorge Bridge lease. The capital projects that are included in the Park Improvement Fund include the tree row fencing, the ADA playground and facility renovations that you had just discussed, and then also the purchase for the land for the shop expansion. Also included in the budget does include splash pad attendance. So in previous years, we had the seasonal parks workers monitor the splash pad. And then in 2020 with COVID, we actually had to have people monitoring the splash pad. And Rex felt that that was very beneficial for us to have and has requested that we continue to dedicate some of our seasonals to the splash pad.
I have some comments to make on that.
Okay.
And how much are we dedicating?
Yeah, because we used COVID money for that, and I have kids that play at that splash pad, and there's often 3 employees sitting in camping chairs just watching the kids.
They're
That's a
watching
lot
for
of money.
COVID.
Well, they actually had to tell my own children to get off the top of the play equipment and stuff. too.
There you
So
go.
they did do that too.
But
It was my kids.
how was it before COVID? I mean, just if we
It
can
was
get
just
out of
open
this.
and
It was
free.
But did you see any problems, anything that needed to be monitored then?
Well, there's some, because sometimes there'd be like 100+ kids there. But there's also part of the fun and the spontaneity of saying, hey, girlfriends, let's go meet at the park and let the kids play while we visit. Under the reservation system, that was impossible to do. It really cut down on that spontaneity of being able to use
Yeah,
it.
and I don't know that we're saying that we're going to continue, I mean, while COVID's in place, we'll continue with the reservation system, but, post-COVID, we're still just talking about splash pad attendance, making sure that water levels and people aren't running on wet surfaces, things like that. I believe what we have in there is 2 part-time positions rather than,
Yes. Yeah, and it's budgeted, I think, at total of 600 hours between the 2 individuals. So it's about 300 hours for each person, and that is from May till September. And Rex does have a schedule devised where, how he's going to have that coverage.
I will say that the fencing around the splash pad was nice. I have talked to Rex about that because it was a lot easier to watch the children and not worry about them, are they in the splash pad, are they in park equipment, or are they in the middle of the river? And so it was nice to have that fencing, and I think that also helped Rex with the water levels and the contamination of the levels. So it wasn't getting contaminated with people going back and forth between the park and the splash pad. So I can understand that part. But I definitely want to keep the splash pad open and available as much as possible.
Wasn't that fencing temporary?
it is temporary fencing
Isn't that
that we have.
COVID fencing?
Yeah, but we have it permanently. We can do what we want with it.
It is.
Yeah.
You said we have it permanently?
Yeah, the tree row fencing that you saw on the screen, that's actually the fencing between along Veterans Park, between Veterans Park and the railroad.
Right. But the fencing around the water, the splash pad, is our fencing or COVID fencing?
That is fencing that we purchased with COVID money, so it is now our fencing.
But that's still temporary type fencing.
It is, it's movable fencing.
Yeah, so it can come and go depending on what we need or or if there's special events and things like that. Or like when we had the reverse parade and the public safety interim Chief Wagner's really concerned about people crossing through the park and getting into the traffic during the reverse parade at Centennial Park. If we could have had that fencing lined out across the park, that would have really helped with that public safety, and there could be more events and things like that.
It was also in effect even before COVID because of, at times when there was an event down and there was alcohol or that, they had the complete splash pad. So nobody could bring alcohol into that area, and, you know, so it's been used even before COVID.
Correct.
And so we're saying the tree row fencing, that's to block off the railroad, right?
That's over at Veterans Park, the tree row fencing.
And just for public comment, that's because there's been some problems with particularly homeless.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have reports from the train where people will just walk out of Veterans Park through that tree line right onto the railroad tracks.
When a train is coming through, yeah.
And so you're talking about replacing those trees that are there?
No, this would just be fencing that goes along the tree line
So they'd have to walk around.
on the
Those
the
are
sidewalks.
adjectives. Okay.
south side. Yep.
And I will add, if I can, about the fencing that is around the splash pad. That has been, super valuable to me as far as, keeping the crowds down. People have enjoyed themselves much more because there's not 150 people on the splash pad at the same time. And it's also been beneficial from the standpoint of keeping the water quality higher than it has been, just because of the numbers of people in the splash pad at the same time. Plus, it has kept the less than desirable aspect out of the splash pad. So that has been a benefit as well.
Adult bathers, is that what you're saying?
Pardon me?
Adult bathers?
Yes.
I will say there shows a demand for splash pad, and the Centennial Park Master Plan does show a little mini splash pad at the clock tower. Just saying.
Yeah, let's don't go.
And the splash pad at Centennial Park was one of 3 in the entire state of Colorado that was open during COVID.
I just politically will state this, that we've gone to restrictions on the splash pad because of COVID, and we need to keep that in mind, that as COVID does whatever it's going to do and we go back to some normalcy, we need to not try to keep this restrictions in place on that pad.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm hearing that right now, that it's really nice with this and that. That pad was intended to be an open public feature.
Here, here.
Yes, it was, but it needs to be monitored.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, no, and it was monitored from the beginning, so, okay. We ready to move on to the next page?
Okay, so the next fund that we will discuss is the Conservation Trust Fund. This is pages 107 through 112. Conservation Trust Fund, the primary source of revenue is lottery proceeds, and those funds are very restricted as to what we can use them for. We are anticipating using approximately $27,500 of reserves from Conservation Trust into the 2021 budget. We are looking to replace a utility maintenance vehicle. We had one budgeted in 2020, and we ended up having to use the funds that were budgeted to replace the one that was vandalized. So we still do need to replace another one. We're also looking to replace a commercial turf mower, and then also to do the improvements at Royal Gorge Campground, the electrical, and the restrooms.
So when I was looking through the budget, it appeared that the revenues that could be generated from the Royal Gorge Campground would sufficiently pay for these upgrades, and perhaps then some, is that right? Which
Eventually,
thumbs
yes.
up on that. Yeah.
Wow. Remember you said that.
Well, we'll see, and I did have a question, so I think I
I'm just
saw the
telling you.
the projected revenue was like $46,000, like,
Projected.
where did that projection come from? Was that a conservative, was that a hopeful, does that include the cost of the campground superintendent?
From a revenue standpoint, it wouldn't include any of the expenses, but Rex put that together based on projections, and I think some of the attendance that we've seen even here in October would suggest that, there's certain, and obviously it's not paid right now, but there's certainly a demand for this type of campground.
Okay, it is a beautiful campground, by the way. Okay, next page.
So we will not be discussing the library donation fund, which is page 113 through 115. All right, no, 117. And we will also not be discussing the museum donation fund, which goes through page 123. Basically, those are funds that if we receive those donations in, we will be expending those. And so it's just an in and an out on those two funds. So we're not covering those in the hearing. The next fund that we will cover is the Quality of Life Fund, which begins on page 125 of your budget.
What was that page number?
125. The primary revenue for the Quality of Life funds is from grants, and then the Royal Gorge Bridge lease revenue. We use the Royal Gorge Bridge lease revenue as essentially our cash match on any of the grants that are in this fund. The capital projects that we have, we have the comprehensive plan, which will be continuing on into 2021. That is the plan that Patrick Mulready is working on. We will also have CMAQ projects, continuation of Rudd House renovations, the U.S. Highway 115 pedestrian improvements, and then the U.S. 50 East lighting.
And so if we could go back to the previous slide, the intergovernmental revenue source, explain that to me again.
That is basically grants that we're receiving. It could be state or federal grants.
So, some of these grants are funded from CDOT, some we have from the Department of Local Affairs, various granting agencies that are providing these funds to the city.
Is there a detail page on that?
127 of your budget shows where the
Thank you.
breakdown is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But the figures on this page, and I'm looking at this life right, that 279 and 20, get your numbers mixed up or something there.
So
That's Royal
after,
Gorge. That 279 in 2020 is actually Royal Gorge.
okay, so you're saying I have those transposed on there.
But then on 2021, it's the 306 that's Royal Gorge.
Right.
So it's flip-flop. I guess what you need to do is just flip the 279 and the 10 up on that screen on 2020, and that would make everything look right. Assuming that the page 125 is right.
Yes, page 125 is right. That is, when I entered those numbers today, I put them in the wrong position on the slide. Are there any other questions on the Quality of Life Fund? Other than the heading is wrong where it says 2019 budget, where it should be 2020 budget and
Right.
2021 budget.
Uh-huh.
That was probably Brian's fault, I would say.
If Jim says it's it.
Refresh my memory on the US 50 East lighting project.
So that's a project, especially over in the Abbey area. There's not a whole lot of streetlights over in that area. So this was something that was submitted, I can't remember I think it was CDOT, a division of CDOT, as a need for the community. We've had a lot of really bad accidents over there in that area, some pedestrian accidents and bicycle accidents over in that area. So this is part of moving to the direction of getting some additional lighting over there in that part of town.
And that's with CDOT money, isn't it? Or some grant money?
Yeah, that's through some grant funds.
And so almost all these capital projects are from grant funds. It would be nice to have some sort of, I don't know, an asterisk or something so we know that's grant funds and not general budget funds.
Well, and that's mostly what the Quality of Life Fund is money from grants, and then we use Royal Gorge revenues as some of the matching
As a
funds for that.
supplement, because it's required by law. But
Yeah.
it'd still be nice, just for, the common eye looking at it, to know that it's coming from grant money.
In this presentation, we do have that detail in our budget.
Right. But also, under quality of life, on page 128, it also talks about the extension of the trail systems and a need to add restroom facilities and improved parking and drainage and accessibility for a 2021 goal. Is that still being accounted for 2021? And if so, which trail system?
Is Adam on? 'Cause I think
No,
he-
Adam's not on.
It's the last bullet on.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right. We will, go ahead.
Rex, do you happen to know what that's referring to? The additional trails and the restroom facilities?
There is a bathroom there.
Huh?
There is a bathroom there. Might have some drainage problems.
Rex, are you still on?
He's gone.
Looks like he's muted.
I see him,
Yeah, he's
but,
muted.
Yeah.
okay.
If you're talking,
Well-
you're muted.
Yeah, we'll get an answer for you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Can you hear me?
Now
Yes.
again.
Okay, the restroom facility that we have budgeted for 2021 is actually a facility in the Royal Gorge Park in the East Ridge Campground. Currently, we have 22 sites available for camping and one small restroom. So the restroom facility budgeted for 2021 is an additional facility in East Ridge Campground in the Royal Gorge Park.
Okay, and that's part of the reason why we charge to camp there, so that they can have.
So it's not a trail,
The
it's
benefit.
part of that park.
Well, it's also
expense.
trailhead, so there's parking for trails. It's a really popular place to start off, to launch on your bikes or hiking.
Yeah, it's very, very popular and increasing every day.
You guys need to
So
wash
the need for that additional facility is paramount.
But I think that goes to the point of if you're camping there, you pay for your restroom facilities that,
Yeah, we'll make sure that we get
Absolutely.
a full explanation for you.
in Europe, that's how you do. To use the restrooms, you have to put coins in the door before you get in. Yeah.
But I can just, as addition, in October, I've been watching that campground. Of course, right now it's free, but at the first of the year, it'll be a pay site. But the campground has probably been 75 to 80% occupied in the month of October this year.
Good.
Awesome. All right, thank you, Rex.
Although it's not necessarily on our subject of quality of life, we are talking about the US 50 lighting as a capital outlay. And I had a question I did from a constituent that I did not know the answer to. So the street lights around town are owned by Canyon City. Owned by-
They're Black Hills with the
Hills.
exception of the streetlights on Main Street.
But we pay for the electricity used by those lights.
Right.
And has Black Hills been looking at LED lights for those? The question was, about energy savings really, and are we, is the city, watching our energy bill and where there's opportunities for reducing by going to different styles of lighting, are we looking at that in those areas? So I'll leave that as an open question.
Yeah, I know we had looked at it a couple of years ago, but I'd have to get you some additional update.
There was a problem. I don't remember what the problem was, but when we talked about it a couple of years ago, there was a glitch.
Yeah, we had talked about it a couple of years ago, and then I know there was an issue when Pueblo changed some of their lights out, their rates actually went up, so.
Right.
Yeah, so I'll get you a better answer than that.
Yeah, it's like they replaced the lights and then charged us for the lights through our electric biller. Because Pueblo's didn't work out quite like they wanted.
All right, so we're on to 2A revenue budget.
Okay, this fund, it starts on page 131 in your budget book and goes through page 135. The primary source of the revenue for the 2A Street Improvement Fund is from the voter-approved 1% sales tax. And then there is also some interest earnings that are allocated to that fund. The budget consists primarily of the street projects and then the debt service payments. No other charges are put against that fund.
So,
And sorry, I was going to say, the list of streets that we have on tap for 2021, you'll find that on page 134 of your budget book. So Orchard, Cherry to the city limit, Allison from Yale to 15th, 10th from College to Mystic, 11th from RGB to Maine, 8th from Fairview to Barr, Harding from North 5th to 9th, and Evelyn, Shiloh to Tanner.
Didn't we just redo some of 10th Street from College? That's right behind the school.
Did 9th Street.
No, 10th.
They took water main up that street for the school.
I don't believe the street has been redone, but there's been some recent work in the
The
street.
water main has been done, which is important.
Are there any portions of these that water projects have to be done as well?
Orchard.
Just Orchard?
Was that the only one, Bob? Orchard?
It depends on how far the money goes. I know you mentioned Harding, which we're not really geared up for that one.
Yeah, that if we get to it, Harding's on the list. But the goal for 2021 was to try and keep the water projects down and work on streets that already had new water in the road already, so we could help focus on a couple other projects and rebuild some of that fund.
I'd say the Orchard, Cherry Street to city limit really needs to be done.
Orchard's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
and so on the previous slide, so it takes me a little while for this to sink in. So several places in the budget where we show interest on monies that we have at various places we have the 2020 budget and we have our 2021. Is that just a conservative approach that we're budgeting such a much smaller amount of interest?
The interest rates right now our earnings are very minimal. We went from earning, I think for over, earlier in the year, we were earning approximately like $5,000 a month possibly in interest in one account, where now that is, $500-600. So interest has gone down. So our earnings just aren't there.
Okay, so it is actually reflecting.
Correct.
The projection. It's not just being conservative, trying to have a little bit of fat on the revenue side.
Right. No, we tried to be,
Conservatism.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, in 2019, $74,000 is what we had there.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow.
Yeah. Interest rates have really, really gone down what we're earning. Okay, with that, we will move on to the water fund. That starts on page 141 and goes through, sorry, I have a lot of other items in my book. 156. So charges for service in the water fund include the water usage, your water usage fees. The 2021 revenue projection was determined by using historical actuals. While the number is less than the previous year, we feel that it is a more conservative approach to the budget. And then the revenue shown also does not include any transfers in that, that we have. So when you're looking at the charges for service for 2020, showing budgeted at 7.3 million, and we're looking at 2021 at 6.4, that is more in line with what our actuals have been. So if you look back at if you look at our 2019 actuals for metered sales, you'd have to add the first, actually that whole column. It's 6.3 million is what we collected in 2019. So looking at what our actuals have been, kind of what we're projecting for this year, what our estimate's going to be, and then also for the 2021 budget. That's where that came from.
These revenues do not have any rate increases in here yet, and we'll discuss that here in a few minutes.
Thank you. I was about to bring that up.
For the expenses, we do have a new position budgeted for as a utility locate position. This person would be dedicated to doing all of the locates. It's estimated at $60,007, which includes family coverage for health insurance. So that is the full burden. It's the salaries and benefits in there. We're also looking to purchase under the capital equipment, a couple pickup trucks, and then our capital projects. We did have the high head pump station started, I think, in 2020. That is carrying over into 2021. You will also see the water department's portion of the land purchase for the shop expansion, and then the water main replacements and 2A projects. So our normal replacements plus then the ones that go along with the 2A projects.
So that high head pump, what's the relationship of that with what we just approved?
So what you just approved was the engineering for that project. The expense will be the actual build out of that project next year.
And that does include the savings that we're anticipating in using this approach?
Actually, I don't know that we included the savings when this initial budget was put together, so those will be numbers that we'll have to look at and provide in the revised edition.
And we don't have those numbers yet, is really the bottom line also.
Right, and I think we'll have some pretty good estimates that we can put in there.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on the water fund?
Just to give council a little bit of info on the water main replacements and the 2A. Again, we'll be doing Orchard Avenue from Cherry to Pear. We'll skip the block between Pear and Central because that's new water main in there already. And then we'll go from Orchard and Central north, but we want to take the water main up to South Street as opposed to stopping in the middle of the run at the city limits line. So that'll be one project that is done in conjunction with 2A. Another project that will be coming out of these monies is related to the stormwater project on East Main and Rhodes. We currently have 24-inch water main coming from the west, approaching the railroad tracks, where then it necks down to a 12-inch and then picks back up on the 24-inch on the east side of the railroad tracks. So we want to do a jack and bore there to push a 24-inch water main underneath the railroad tracks and connect the two ends and get rid of that bottleneck. The third project is, for many years now, we have had some issues in certain areas of the Dawson Ranch subdivision in regards to low pressure. When that subdivision was initially designed, it really could have used 3 different hydraulic gradients due to the topography out there. However, developer kind of pushed back on that, the added expense of another pumping station, storage tank, and all that. So the city acquiesced and went with 2 hydraulic gradients. Well, there's some folks, if you think along Eagle Crest, where Morning Dove intersects, that's kind of right at the top end of the hydraulic gradient for the 1 million gallon tank. And we have some folks in there that are seeing less than 40 pounds of pressure. Some of them have gone to the added expense of putting their own pressure pumps in the houses, which is an added cost to them, plus the ongoing costs of maintenance with those. And so we feel a pressure reducing station in that area, it'd be a vault in the ground, would help alleviate that problem, let them folks have pressure that at least 50 to 60 pounds, and overcome that.
How much would that cost?
We looked at a packaged vault, have a company that actually puts them all together, builds them in the factory, and then they ship the vault to the site, and you excavate the big hole, cut your pipe, lower the vault into the ground and connect the 2 ends, and load it, and it's ready to go. We're estimating maybe around $120,000 for that, including the, like I say, the installation. And
How
then
much does it cost for an individual household to put in their own pressure?
I would say maybe $1,500
For a pump?
for a pressure pump to be inside a house.
How many residents are impacted by this low pressure?
I'd say we have at least maybe a dozen.
Kind of like the tow situation.
I'm sorry?
No, I was talking to myself.
Okay. There are lots in Dawson Ranch, way to the very south end, that do have lower pressure. But when those lots were platted, that information was put on the deeds. And when someone buys those lots, they know ahead of time that they have to put in these pressure pumps. That was not the case for these residents down a little bit further north. And so, like I say, we tried moving the hydraulic gradient down the hill a little bit on Morning Dove. So instead of feeding water from the 1 million gallon tank, we feed it from the 500,000 gallon tank further up on the foothill. However, that gives them well over 100 pounds pressure, which is, hard on their plumbing It's ideally a little hard on the distribution system as well, especially if you ever get subject to water hammer or something. And so we felt that this would be a good fix for overcoming that issue.
I remember having some of these conversations with our former administrator, and at that time, the recommendation to some of the disgruntled property owners was that that was an expense that they needed to take care of themselves. What triggered the change in that conversation?
Well, just again, had a couple more residents complain about it and want to know what the city's going to do about it.
Okay. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I mean, you said it's about $1,500 per person to get these pumps in, and if there's 10 people, or even at 15 people, you know, the number becomes pretty darn low. It comes out to be 22,000 at 15 people at 1,500.
Sure.
Would that be an easier solution for the city?
They'll have the ongoing expense unless the city's willing. I mean, there's.
It's kind of their
But
responsibility.
isn't that kind of their,
I mean, it's going to add a little bit to their power bill and, of course, then ongoing maintenance.
Won't that add to our power bill? Isn't that station going to have to be powered?
Well, there
Yes.
would be electricity to the vault, but only for interior lighting or something. There is nothing in the vault that requires electricity for it to operate.
Just a
But-
pressure reducer. It's just a pressure reducer.
right, but then we're basically asking, you know, the city taxpayers to
The ratepayers,
subsidize-
the ratepayers, no
Ratepayers,
taxes.
excuse me,
Yeah.
excuse me. Ratepayers to subsidize for 10 to 15 houses, so, I don't know, you know,
I
just
understand-
a thought.
Yep, I understand your concerns there and stuff.
I kind
you
of
know.
see like a rebate thing, if that was a concern, that if they paid for it, we would rebate that
Yeah.
one-time
We-
installation.
We can take a look at that further
Sure.
and see if there's some other options.
Well, yeah, this is, in my view, and perhaps I'm not looking at this the right way, but it's kind of like the problem, if we want to call it that we've got out at Dawson Ranch altogether. There were lots of decisions made that are coming back to bite us now. I mean, it's like, a little bit like arguing, well, people knew there weren't curbs and gutters when they moved out there, but still there's a problem. The city has stepped up to address that problem, and it really seems to me that this is kind of in that league.
Well, the city's not putting curb and gutters up in Dawson. I think that would have to be a special district.
Public improvement district.
The public improvement district, and at this time, the neighborhood is not interested in that kind of investment.
And I mischaracterized that. I'm talking about the stormwater
Oh.
improvements.
Right.
You know, I think it's a numbers thing, and if, you know, we got 15 residents, I'm sure I could get 15 contiguous residents together that feel like 9th Street's trash. You need to take care of that. I mean, when we start bringing that number down to small numbers to use city funds to address a citizen concern, we got to be careful, because there's 15 people along 9th Street that want that street fixed. And it's the same concept. I mean, it was like that when they moved in there. They shouldn't have bought a house there.
I understand what you're saying, and I mean, I don't know how many folks, of course, you know, a lot of them homeowners were the ones who developed the lots, and, you know, I'm sure they didn't have the water service dug up and check pressure on it
Right.
before they purchased the lot.
I agree.
I mean, I understand about the buyer beware concept, but I'm just trying to, like I
Right.
say, address a chronic problem that we've had for many years. And there's some folks up there that we're hoping we could do something.
We appreciate you being customer-oriented and friendly to that, but let's have staff and Ryan kind of take a second look at that and see if there might be a more
Sure.
feasible solution looking ahead.
Okay.
Are we ready to move on from that? Okay. Thank you for being here today, Bob.
The next fund we'll discuss is the stormwater fund. That is pages 163 through 169 of your budget book. The revenue that is shown is not reflective of the lease purchase financing revenue that we will receive. We did approve in 2020 the purchase of the vac truck. We will not take delivery of that truck until 2021, and the financing will be finalized then as well. So both of those will be accounted for in the 2021 budget. So we'll have lease proceeds as revenue, and then we will have a capital expenditure for the vehicle, and then you'll also see a lease payment. So it looks like it's in there a few times, but the revenue and the expense will offset each other for the $500,000, and then the annual lease payment is budgeted. And then the reason you see such a significant increase in the personnel costs, if you recall earlier this year when we approached council about the rate increase for stormwater, we did increase those rates, and at that time we asked for a supervisor position and a technician to be funded to be able to run that vac truck. And so those salaries are now in the 2021 budget, and that's why you do see that significant increase.
And we did approve that, those positions, are they out for hire already? I mean, I thought we...
Yeah, we actually just announced or just made an offer to an internal employee who's going to be taking over the supervisor position. And I believe the other position is out for job advertisements out now.
That'll start this fall, right? So they can just start the planning.
Yeah, so the supervisor
Master
position will
plan.
be starting, this fall. They'll be sitting with our stormwater technician as well, learning some of the rules and regulations and, making sure, all the discharge points are and everything that they need to know from a stormwater standpoint, so they're up to speed on that.
So, Jim, when the vac truck gets in operation, I want to see it in action. Why don't you see suck out some tennis shoes and 2x4s and all that?
Bring your boots and let you drive.
I'll bring my.
Can you get pedal extenders tonight?
Absolutely.
And just like the water rates, this does not include any rate increases for the stormwater.
Right. The revenue shown is based on what we're estimating 2020 to come in. So if I go back a page, we had budgeted 1.6 million for the 2020 budget because at that time we did not have any rate increase. Based on the rate increase that we did earlier in the year and projecting it out through the end of the year, that's where that budget number came from for 2021. Are there any questions on the stormwater fund?
Let's move on.
Okay. The next fund we will discuss is the self-insurance fund. That starts on page 171.
Oh, wait, pause. Sorry, I just turned over my page. I did have a question.
Okay.
And this actually is an old question from Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick, and that is on the stormwater budgeting, if we could divide the costs that are associated with the MS4 permit and then the regular operating costs, that would be really helpful for us to differentiate between what we are required to do by state and what we are doing for stormwater in general for the city.
Send that one bill to Trump.
And then, yeah, Meisner wants you to send the rest of it to Trump. Okay. That's all I have, sorry.
Okay.
And actually, so I'm looking at page 166 of the budget. We're looking at the stormwater utility fund, utility fees, and it's the first table there where it shows the change from previous year, and we're not showing a increase in fees for 2021. Is that correct?
Based on the estimate. So what that percentage does is it looks at what we estimated 2020 to come in, and then I set the 2021 budget at our estimate, and so that's why it's showing as a 0%. We will discuss a rate increase.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right, so the self-insurance fund is pages 171 through 175. The charges for service in the self-insurance fund include the premiums that are paid both by the city and the employee for the medical insurance. The 2021 revenue is based on the estimated revenue from 2020. Because if you look at our 2020 budget, we had 2.5 million budgeted. We're anticipating revenue coming in a little over 2.3 million. Part of that is because we did offer we offered a different plan in 2020, and so we had our mix change. And then we also, if we budgeted for a full-time or a family coverage and it came in at single coverage, that revenue was less. And so that's where that was adjusted out.
Didn't we make some kind of an adjustment on the insurance fund this year? 60,000 or something like that?
That was for 2019. We did an amendment for the 2019 budget in early 2020 as what we had done.
Yeah, and for 2020, there was a rate increase of about 8.5%, if that's what you're referring to.
Mhm. And we are looking at a 3.5% rate increase for 2021. We did make some changes to the plan. We did modify the vision plan, and we also changed who our prescription carrier is. It is still all billed through Meritain, but it is the provider network. We did change that. Our estimated reserves that we're looking at the end of 2020 is approximately $815,000 at the end of 2021, and this is taking what we're anticipating claims to be, having possibly a lower revenue, even though we're going to have some increases, of ending up with that reserves at $747,000. Our reserve should be between $700,000 and $900,000. This is a much better position than we thought we would be in, because in 19, when we were looking at our claims and how things were happening, and without any increases in the insurance for a few years, it was not looking really good. And so I think we are on the right track, and we are anticipating continuing to have small increases every year.
Councilmember Meisner.
So do we do a comparison of our benefits with any of the major providers? And I know that's a little bit of a challenge, but I mean, there's some public information out there that maybe just comparing to the state plan to see what the costs are for the state plan and the benefits that are available from that state plan in terms of where does our plan stand relative to the employee costs and the benefits that they're receiving?
Our broker looks at our plan every year to see if we would go out to the open market versus being self-insured, what those costs would be, and comes back to us with that. And it has shown that it is more cost-effective for the city to remain self-insured. We do make changes in our stop-loss carrier when necessary. We actually did do that for our new plan year. And because our plan is basically an unbundled plan, we can change any one part of it without impacting the whole plan. So if our network wasn't giving us the discounts that we feel that we need, we can go get a different network. We're on the Aetna network. So if we went out and we could see the Blue Cross Blue Shield was possibly going to be better, we can change just that portion of it. And so every year, our broker does look at that for us.
So Councilman Meisner, are you asking whether or not we're comparing our benefits to other agencies, or are you asking more on the cost side, whether or not we're in line with, from a competitive standpoint on that side?
Whatever cost our employees have, I think we need to be competitive. Just slightly, John. I think we need to be competitive, nicely, with other area governments, but then, I know some of that stuff may be difficult to get a hold of, but I know the state information's public, that you can see what the employee costs are there, and then you can see what the corresponding benefits to the employees are. And I think our plan, even though we're self-insured, needs to be comparable. And with all due respect, does the broker have a financial interest in us remaining self-insured? How does he get paid?
He gets
He gets a cut.
He gets something from
Right.
the carriers. He does provide us the list of, so when he goes out to bid for, let's say, our stop loss, he provides all of that to us. And we look at it and we determine, okay, we want to switch to this carrier, this stop loss carrier. We also this year said, okay, we want to look at possibly doing something different with our vision plan. And so he came back and showed us multiple vision plans.
Okay.
And we were able to look at it and say that by us going with a fully insured vision plan, it's going to save the city money versus offering it under our self-insured. So our vision plan will switch to a fully insured, so it will be a separate carrier than we have with our health insurance right now. And so, yes, he does look at any of those things and, you know, provide us the data we need to make a decision that's best for the city. And as far as our benefits are concerned, our plan is a very rich plan, and our co-pays and our out-of-pocket are probably richer than other plans, and so it's attractive to the employees.
I think from a recruiting standpoint, we have a good health benefit plan, and in places where we can't compete on salary, we do compete very well on the benefit side.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, ready to move on from that slide?
No, go ahead.
The remaining slides are going to talk about some things that we have not so this is one that talks about our capital items that we did not fund. We did have other vehicle replacements requested that we did not fund. Most of those were in general fund. We also did not include anything for changing our finance program. I did receive a quote from one provider, and with implementation costs, it is over $200,000 the first year to do it, and then an annual cost of $130,000 a year. And so we are reaching back out to our current software provider to see if there are enhancements we can do to get our system functioning and providing the data we need to. So we're looking at some other alternatives. If we're not able to get the system to do what we need to, then we will need to look at moving. We also requested was the Main Street downtown improvements. That was not recommended for funding. We also delayed the filter media replacement. We delayed that. We delayed a flatbed dump truck for water, and then also a mini excavator, and also another pickup truck. We did fund a couple items below the requested amount that included the downtown alleys and then the sidewalk replacement program.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
And so, on the sidewalk replacement program, previously, the city had, if I recall correctly, the city funds a certain dollar amount for sidewalk replacement that had not been looked at for several years, that dollar amount.
It's a cost share program with
Correct.
the property owners, yes, sir.
And it was my understanding when we had that discussion about that, the city was going to look at possibly increasing that because the issue, as I remember it, was that we set the amount that the city was willing to pay on the cost share several years ago that did not take into account the cost rises that you see in construction. And because of that, really, the amount the city pays for sidewalk replacement is shrinking compared to the overall cost.
Yeah, and I don't know that we were up to last year, but we can look at that for 2021.
Okay.
The rate, that is, yeah.
Okay.
And we'll probably also get you some numbers as well as on utilization as well. I feel like the utilization has been higher this year as well.
Okay.
Utilization of the program?
Yeah.
Right. Which walkability is important, which is part of that comprehensive plan. And that draft talked a lot about not just the need to replace sidewalks, but create more sidewalks and walkability. But going back to things that aren't funded, sorry to kind of backtrack to public safety in our police department. And Tammy, maybe you can help with this question. Is for 21st century policing, it's really important, a big conversation around that is having our police officers receive crisis intervention training. And if I remember correctly, we only have one officer who has that certification, and that's our co-responder. And wondered if there is budgeted some training dollars so that we can have all of our officers, or at least quite a bit more of our officers with the CIT training. Tammy may have been checked out because that was a really long time ago. Or there you are.
So I was going to talk to you a little bit, if I can, about CIT. I've been looking into getting officers trained here locally. I know the sheriff's office has done it as well. We are planning on this upcoming year with our training funds to at least start taking several officers each time and get them. It is a 40-hour training, so getting them through that 40-hour training. Several of us at the agency are already CIT trained. It's just a matter of working with those agencies and getting that training brought to us, so we don't have the extra cost of sending our officers elsewhere and having to pay for per diem or pay for hotel costs to try and get some of that cost savings.
All right, thank you, Tammy.
Pueblo didn't do our training.
Councilmember Meisner wants to know if Pueblo had done our training.
I thought
it's
somebody said
available.
last time that Pueblo did our training.
Crisis intervention.
The CIT might be different. I
So
don't know.
we've done,
Police training.
yeah, we've done cadet training through Pueblo before. We've since changed and sponsoring through Pikes Peak Community College and some other schools.
Well, the last conversation that we had about the change in some legislative laws, we talked about are we adequately trained, and it was reiterated pretty heavily that
The post training.
that our police
Yes.
department
So-
training comes through Pueblo.
What you're referring to is the Central Mountain Training Region, which Pueblo pretty much heads up. They do breathing training from time to time to the area. Those classes do fill up very quickly. CIT is very desirable to put officers through that particular training. So as soon as it comes available, our instructors start looking into that immediately to get some of our folks signed up. With the number of officers that we have, we're kind of limited on how many we can send at one time, obviously. So our training funds have been kind of locked down due to budget. So that's one of the things that we're looking at, is getting that lined up as quickly as possible.
So looking at the budget for police operations, we have about $25,000 in training budgeted for this year.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we keep the CIT on our radar, especially with that need for 21st century policing. Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick?
And so a capital item not funded is accounting software. You have it listed as finance program. That's really accounting software is what we're talking about. And Ryan, from your perspective, are you getting all the information that you need from our current accounting software?
I think that our current accounting software could do more, and whether it was, I don't know if it's how it was set up originally, but that's what Tammy was just talking about. Going back to our current provider, it may be less expensive to try and retrofit or rehab what we have than trying to go to a new software provider, and that's the analysis that we're going to move to next.
As part of that, just kind of a corollary question, where does the backup for all of our accounting numbers reside? Is that's part of IT, what IT provides in redundant drives and
Right,
and things
server
like
with
that?
a backup drive, yeah.
Backup drives, yeah, okay. All right, so the software provider that you looked at, was that the same one that currently provides the accounting software?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. They are expensive, I know. But you hope that we can get.
That's what we're going to evaluate, whether or not we can get to where we need. I know there are other communities that use the same software that we use, and they're able to pull the reports that I would like to see. So I think it's a matter of how some of it was set up originally.
Let me remind you, there are P-Tech interns available that work really cheap.
Hey, guess what? Our accounting software's not working anymore.
Well, if you're talking about custom reports, and you want somebody to get into the guts of a software program, there's a resource right there.
Okay, great.
Any more questions for capital items not funded? Thank you for concluding that page. I appreciate
No problem.
seeing the sacrifices that some of our departments are making.
Items that we have for consideration that we will come back to council on include our water rate increase and then also our stormwater. So what we've provided here is a 3% and then a 9% increase. And shown is the residential inside city limit increases. The 3% is essentially just trying to keep up with inflation. The 9% is what was recommended by the rate study. And so when you look at the monthly bill for a 3% increase, that goes to $38.17, which is about a $13.44 annual increase. At the 9%, it goes up to $40.38, or increases $39.96 for the year. And again, these are things that we want to have council start thinking about, and we would like at least some feedback on which way you're thinking you would like to go, so then we can come back with that request for rate increases.
Ryan, I think something I would like to see is you had initiated a program through Loaves and Fishes with COVID money to help pay for utilities of residents that are having a hard time making ends meet because of the global pandemic. And it would be really interesting to see how many of our residents are using that, because I do have a concern for the budgets of our residents moving forward into 2021. Councilmember Meisner.
Well, I think the point that Mayor Smith has mentioned is critical. But what goes along with that is I would rather have a cost of living increase and then make some temporary adjustment to accommodate for the COVID complications. But we've got to keep the schedule moving forward. And at a minimum, we have to keep that at cost of living increases. The second question is what percentage did we settle on last year?
9%?
9%.
Was it the 9?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I know we wanted to keep up at the 9%. COVID's definitely put a wrench in that, but I definitely recognize the need for cost of living increases. That's something that really put us behind, was not keeping up with
I
inflation.
mean, if you don't do cost of living, you're never going to catch up. And the next person, it's not fair to the next council, whoever that is, that we decided that they needed to double it. I mean, there is never a good time, but I think we need to move forward with minimal, reasonable adjustments. And for those that it's a burden in our community, then we implement those plans to help address getting that taken care of for those people where it's a burden.
And if this next stimulus package does come to fruition, that might be able to take care of those same residents in 2021 as well. Yeah.
Can I just, either nod of head or something from the rest of the council, just to make sure that we're heading in the right direction there? Is that?
But you're certain we did 9, Bob?
Yes.
For the water, yes.
Huh?
So are you
For
saying
water.
not ahead for 3% for
Yeah,
inflation?
for 3%, so that way we can bring back a new
Yeah,
budget book
3
that has that 3% increase.
3%'s a no-brainer
Let's
for me.
recognize we have 3 council members that are not here today, and this is one of the most important discussions we have of the year. But let's start at one side, and
Yep.
Three.
I'm also for 3.
3.
Absolutely, 3.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next page was showing what that increase would do to the non-residential inside city limits. So with the 3% increase, that would be an increase of approximately $12.96 per year, and that is for a monthly bill of 10,000 gallons.
And I also like to make a note that there is COVID funding to help for commercial businesses with their utilities due to difficulties financially because of COVID.
Then we also have stormwater rates for consideration. The 3%, if we do a 3% increase for residential, it's approximately $5.69 a year. For commercial, it is $29.31 a year as the increase. If we go with the 9%, it's $17.07 a year for residential, and commercial is $87.93.
What did we do last year?
Last year, so for 2020, we did not do a 9%. What we did is we looked at our budget and said, we want to add the 2 new staff members, and we want to cover the cost of the lease payment. And so that is how we determined what our rate increase was for 2020. So it actually was closer to, I think it was a 15% increase.
Any discussion from council? I mean, you're just looking for a general
Yeah.
feeling,
Yeah,
right?
so we can
You don't have to
update the
make a
budget
decision.
book and get you a new budget book that has some revenue increase, or, depending on council's feeling, no revenue increase, but we would like to make sure that we're updating the budget book accordingly, so we're giving you accurate information.
Councilmember Meisner.
Well, same philosophical thing applies here, other than we spent all of our money for the next 10 years. So that doesn't mean we don't continue to try to keep up with rates. So, I mean, we can't stop doing some form of annual increase. I mean, we just can't do that. I mean, it's not sound business. It's not fair to future councils to have to deal with double-digit increases versus single-digit, and none of it is easy to sell to anybody, including myself. But we're not going to gain anything, even at 9%. We're not going to gain anything. We're not even going to fund any projects, right?
It's
At
just keeping
9%.
up with inflation. Yeah.
Yeah, just keeping
That's
up.
correct.
3% keeps up, but 9%.
9% would give a little bit more wiggle room, but I think
$100.
considering what we're up against. So you're recommending 3%.
A minimum of 3%.
Minimum 3%. Let's start again on this end. Thumbs up from
3.
Councilmember Smith.
3.
3.
I like 3, but I mean, if, I don't know if I like 9, but if we could come in with a number in between there, 5% or something.
That's a good point.
Huh?
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, we'll come up with a little bit number, so we don't have to go at 9%, maybe even at 5%, and just help build, thought.
Well,
6.
And
That would
that,
be a
part of that
6%.
discussion could be, we have some 2021 projects that'll be executed, and it'll be interesting to see what those bids come in at. Because East Main and Roads is getting a little more complicated than we thought, and we might need some extra funds. I also think it'll be important, Ryan, maybe in your discussions with council members, to talk with those who are not here tonight to kind of get some of their feedback as well.
Absolutely.
So are you wanting to see something in between?
Well, Tim brings up a good point.
I think that's such a, you're going from, that's a 6% difference in between there. I think if you
Your
put something more.
microphone,
I think
Tim.
it might, I think it works. It gives us a little bit
Up
more
on your
revenue
mic.
coming in and.
Yeah, I think if we, instead of going, taking a low and then the 9%, let's go in between there and work it, 5-6% and try to work in that range. And I think that might, I think that might give us a number that we all might feel a little bit better about. It'll still, like Jim says, nobody's going to like it, but we're not pushing a huge number right down at first, and we're not taking a little low number and then all of a sudden 3 years down the road go, gosh, we got to make it higher. So let's take it just a little bit higher than the 3% and see where that goes.
I think for a commercial, I also would like to refer to the draft of the comprehensive planning talked about how for our commercial businesses, they really wanted to see more options to have stormwater-friendly parking lots and driveways, and so that could help compensate for some of those cost increases.
So 6 could be like a COVID increase versus the 9. I like that, Tim.
I said 5.
Well, I'm just saying, well, you said half. You said 5, but you also said half, which would be 6.
So let's move on.
Okay.
No, but do you have clear direction? Do you have, or are you
I
here?
think we've got enough direction to move forward.
I
Okay.
think so.
All right.
So between now and the final budget book, there will be some additional changes made. You will get a revised budget book that will reflect the changes that we've already made that you have not seen yet. And then also, we will be having open enrollment, so there will be some adjustments to personnel costs. Basically, if I had somebody budgeted at family coverage and they come in at single, I want to adjust that down. So we will make those adjustments. And then we will also look at the projects that were started in 2020 that will be carried over into 2021, and to make sure we have enough funding to cover those. Any unused funds of those projects would essentially go back to the fund balance and be reallocated for the next year. We've received a few different numbers for the CRCA budget. We think we have the last one, but just in case we have to adjust it, we're going to, we have that on there. So if there are any other changes, and then any other changes that council is requesting to be made, we will incorporate those.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
And just so you know, CRCA amended their bylaws so that budget numbers are due the 1st of August next year. So that should take away this kind of problem that we've had this year.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I do have a question. Because it talks about salary increases citywide. We have it just for the minimum wage increase and cost of living increase, but there's no merit increase. But we are doing a $50,000 study about wage increases. Did we not budget to be able to accommodate some of those needed wage increases based on that study?
Yeah, we do have some money budgeted, as I mentioned earlier, for the police department to possibly do some wage increases there. We also know that within the Parks Department that we have some struggles there. We lose a lot of employees there because of salary, so we do have some money budgeted there to try and fix those salaries as well, based off of what we learned from that study.
And
Thank you.
also with that study, because it is going to be fairly comprehensive by reviewing job descriptions and make sure that we're following, as Ryan mentioned, the equal pay for equal work. It is going to take a bit of time to get through that entire project. And so then we will have some costs then to be able to approach council with at a future date, if we need it to, have it for a 2022 budget.
Okay.
So that's where what we're looking at with that.
But, just to piggyback on that, we do recognize parks and, especially the police department. Those are more critical, and we may look at, especially the police departments, maybe pulling that out of the scope of work for this study, and do that internally, so we can address that sooner than later, because that, as Tammy mentioned, that study will take quite a bit of time to work through.
Okay, Councilmember Meisner.
I'll try to remain calm. What are the feeling of you two in terms of the city's number one asset?
It's our employees.
So I'm mind boggled by how we sit here and deliberate over trying to increase the compensation for our number one asset in the city. But we're very willing to go out and do another study to figure out if those employees are being underpaid, that we know that they're already underpaid. If our directors don't understand their market enough to help you guys do an adjustment to try to even that out, we're probably in the wrong business. I mean, if I could personally vote down the $50,000 study, I would do that, but I can't do that. So I think I've said my point. Thank you.
Do you have a reaction, staff, on the philosophy of using that $50,000 to go straight to pay increases?
Yeah, I think, it's more complicated than just having a department head or HR director look at it and just try and come up with something that is going to address the salary issues. There are a lot of factors, especially, I think, PD is a little bit different. I think PD is a little bit more isolated. It's I don't want to say it's easy to try and fix that one, but there, you go through a process to become a sworn officer. There are only so many places where, somebody in the PD can go. When you look at somebody like the courts clerks, where they have, we can't just look at other courts. I mean, those employees, we're competing against many different venues or many different employers that we have to consider. And I think looking at having a study to do that certainly helps address some of the things that are on the outskirts, outliers that we're not necessarily addressing directly if we're going around calling up other courts and asking what they're paying. It's more complicated than just that.
I see that our HR director, Ivy Morris, is on, and she's been on for over 2 hours, and this is kind of your chance to participate in our meeting, Ivy, if you'd like to say something.
Yeah, I agree. The salary studies are extremely complicated. I think with past issues where we've just kind of isolated and focused on certain departments each year to help look at salary increases and whatnot, that also has created a little bit of a morale issue So I think by showing that we are interested enough and care about our employees enough to do an outside comprehensive study that's going to look at, their salaries, we're going to review their job descriptions. I think that's going to go a long way to help boost morale as well.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Well, I'd just like to say there's always an issue with if you're looking at salary increases. And the issue can be if you are having department heads look at what an appropriate salary increase is, you can always run into the parochial problem where you have where if you're a department head and you have someone that makes your job easier, you're going to want to compensate that person. If you have someone that makes your job harder, you're going to want to not compensate that person as well. And the idea is, especially in a city or an organization like we've got here, is to take some of that parochialism out of the salary study and put it onto a logical, comprehensive basis, so that when you're increasing a particular salary classification, that it's appropriate for the duties that those people perform. The studies are important to do that kind of thing. And I understand the frustration of spending money to study a problem when it seems like the answer is fairly well straightforward. But it is not really straightforward, and the problem is that you can, without things like this, to rebaseline, to get everybody on an apples-to-apples comparison of their duty set versus another employee's duty set, and why that results in a pay differential is important to have.
From a neutral party, as you're saying? Councilmember Meisner.
Well, if I recall correctly, this is the third employee salary survey done since I've been on council.
By an outside
The first one
party?
we did, if I recall correctly, was done, and then they determined they used the wrong cities because it wasn't relevant to Canyon City. So then they went back and did a corrected one, and then we've done at least one, if not two, specific police surveys. But my question is that when you're done with your survey, in what, 6 months? Or are we even going to be able to do it in 6 months?
Ivy, do you have an idea of what the timing on that might be?
We've told those that are submitting bids that we anticipate an end date of end of July.
6 months, that's 7 months.
Yeah.
Well, this is a
And
2021
I was giving them the
budget.
benefit of the doubt in the new year. So in July, the survey comes back and it says, we need to do across the board 9.5%. What are you going to tell me then?
It's going to be a phased approach, just
There
like
you
we're
go. You're going to
trying to
have a
bring up
phased approach to get our employees online with the competitors that are in the area and relative to the survey. And I'm saying, why waste the time? Why waste the money? Just like the water rates, get some things going now, because we know that all of our employees can deserve an increase. I don't think there's anybody in this organization that can't disagree with the guy working out in the street department with a shovel in his hand, filling in the ditch, needs an increase, as well as one of the guys in the water department, as well as the guy running the lawnmower in the parks department.
How many employees do we have total?
We have about 155.
So we'd be looking at $320 per employee if we did that for a year. I mean, if you think about it, if we took $50,000 and divided it by 155 or whatever, it's really a minimal. But still, that's $320.
Relative to that minimal concept,
Yeah.
I ask people when you use that approach, is bring the employees in here and lay $350 on the counter and say, take it or leave it. And I doubt that many employees are going to say, nah, go ahead and keep it. I have enough money.
And this is like, I deserve $10,000 more a year based on my competitors.
You're elected, you don't count.
I put myself in their shoes when I said that.
Okay. So I'll lose the battle, but I needed to convey that I think we're wasting our money.
Any other comments from council on that subject? Okay, so let's move on.
One thing on this slide that I would like to point out is that we are making some changes to the police retirement. FPPA is now requiring that the pension contribution increase 0.5% a year until 2030. And right now our contribution is 8%. So in 2021 it will go to 8.5% and then continues to increase until 2030. We are also required to have death and disability premiums that we pay into FPPA, and that goes up approximately 0.2% every other year. Currently, the city pays 100% of that, and that rate right now is 2.8%. What we're looking at doing is making that 0.2% be a deduction on the employees. So having some of that cost borne by the employee. And we are in guidelines with FPPA. A lot of employers split those costs on the death and disability. They split it 50-50, and others have it employee only. The other item that we're doing to help offset is we do a 457 plan for the police officers. This is not common to do. And so what we're looking at doing is reducing that contribution by the 0.5% every year to help offset the increase in the pension that we have to do until that is eliminated. That will be eliminated by 2027. So I just wanted to make sure that council was aware of what we're looking at doing.
Councilmember Meisner.
Just quickly, on the death and disability, what are they paying now? Anything?
Nothing.
Okay. I think it's reasonable. I mean, for them to pay a small percentage of all of those things, but you get back in the immediate question at base level compensation.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on.
The other items are just a summary of everything that is funded. This one shows what our capital equipment is. It's just all in one place so you can see what was funded. The next page is capital projects, just kind of lumped together so you have an easy reference to see what they are.
Thank you. I like having that.
You're welcome. And then also the last two slides are showing what our health insurance premiums are going to be. So we have Plan A and Plan B. There are differences in the level of coverage, and that is why Plan B is a lower cost premium to the employees. And that is what I have for the presentation. Does council have any other questions or comments about anything that is in the budget?
I have just a couple real quick. One is I noticed and I recognize in all of the 2021 goals for each of the departments, it doesn't mention the balanced scorecard because we haven't finalized that yet, but when we do finalize the balanced scorecard goals, I'd like to see those reflected in the 2021 goals. And then if I were a citizen and I were to look up on this slide and compare page 1 and page 2 with the revenues of about 32.6 million and our expenditures of 44.2 million, it appears to be a deficit of 12.6 million. but we say we're in budget with a 20% reserve. Can you give an explanation for, I mean, that it appears to be a really big discrepancy.
So in order for a budget to be considered balanced, your available resources have to, your expenses cannot exceed your available resources. The available resources are your current year revenues plus any reserves. And so, yes, we are using approximately $12 million in reserves. The majority of that is going to capital projects. When you look at the water department, the use of reserves is close to $2 million. We have a $1.9 million capital projects budgeted. In stormwater, when we have $5 million in capital projects budgeted, that's coming out of reserves. And then also, we have some of the reserves being used in 2A. So when you look at it, it is primarily our capital projects that are doing it.
Okay, any other final questions or comments from council? Meisner?
Did I miss the difference between Plan A and Plan B?
We didn't discuss what they were. I didn't.
So we came up with a revised Plan B last year, and part of it was because we have, it's mandatory participation for employees to participate in the health plan. We do have some employees who already have health insurance either through military benefit or through their spouses. So Plan B was a reduced coverage at a reduced rate for those who are looking for something a little bit different.
So an employee can choose between Plan A and,
Yes, they can choose between that.
all right.
Just final comments. I just really want to make sure that our sincere thanks are expressed to each of the department heads for their work in creating a budget that was conservative as much as it could be considering COVID-19. And also recognition that we're just doing some bare bones stuff, just some basic common governance. There's not a lot, I mean, there's almost no bells or whistles here. And I'm okay with that this year. That's a good thing. I think we're where we need to be. And so thank you to our department heads for putting their budget together, especially to the finance department. I know this was a lot of work. And thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
with that, I'm going to close this public hearing. Thank you.